This is Southwest Florida in Focus. A feral cat population boom overloading animal shelters. Now local pet lovers are turning to Broadway to raise awareness for this growing feline problem. Following in the footsteps of the Commander-in-Chief, the Legacies being maintained by the descendants of American presidents. And bridging the gap between cultures and countries, the International Festival highlighting unique traditions from all around the world. Hello, I am Jennifer Crawford. Thank you so much for joining us. Homeless cats are filling up animal shelters in Southwest Florida, and the number of unwanted kitties growing every day. It's estimated 250,000 feral and community cats live in Lee County, and programs such as Trap, Neuter, and Return are only making a small dent in controlling the cat population. Now, a familiar Broadway production shining a spotlight on the feline problem in our area. WGCU's Tom Hall takes us behind the curtain to learn more about this unique partnership.
Inside this Fort Myers theater, the cast of cats meet their namesakes from Cape Coral Animal Shelter. Outside the theater, a looming problem for felines. There are an estimated 250,000 feral and community cats on the loose in Lee County alone. Cape Coral Animal Shelter Executive Director Liz McCauley couches the problem in human terms.
We have people that walk into our shelter every single day with a box of kittens and say, hey, found these kittens, we don't know where mom's at, and sometimes 6, 7, 8 of them at a time. And it is a crisis.
Between the shelter and the stage is a collaboration. And it's intended to raise awareness about the magnitude of the problem and hopefully inspire people to adopt some of the shelter's kittens and cats. Since it's what's known as a managed acceptance facility, Cape Coral Animal Shelter can only accept what it has room for.
We are in the process of expanding, though. We are getting ready within the next few months to break ground on a 19,000 square foot additional shelter, which is going to quadruple the amount of room we have for cats, which is going to be really important. We'll be able to save a lot more.
Shelter capacity treats the symptom, not the cause. McCauley says there's a pressing need to trap, spay, and vaccinate to reduce the feral and community cat population.
There's just not enough programs in the community to get that done, so we are trying to work with Lee County and some of the vets in the community to take care of that problem. Our shelter alone is doing at least 2 trap, neuter, release clinics on Sundays, at least 2 a month we're trying to do to just try to get that population down.
Now from the shelter, back to the stage. Cats also places a premium on production value. The set and lighting are sensational. The costumes reflect each feline's unique character. With haunting melody and poignant lyrics, Memory is one of Andrew Lloyd Webber's greatest songs. And director Amy Marie McCleary's choreography perfectly encapsulates Cats' distinctive movements.
We try to incorporate that in our choreography in their grace and then also like sudden movements. One of the things that's so wonderful about this show as an actor is that you get to use your entire body to express how you're feeling. People who don't understand the show sometimes don't realize how powerful it is when they see those emotions expressed with a full physicality.
Metaphorically, Cats recognizes the wisdom and heritage contributed to society by those of a more mature age. The Jellicle Cat's patriarch is the wise and revered Old Deuteronomy. Bustopher Jones, a 25-pound upper-class dandy, brings a sense of culture and panache to the Jellicles. But it's the aging glamour cat, Grisabella, who truly tests the Jellicles' social structure.
She, as an older woman, is ostracized, and sometimes we don't celebrate older women as much as we should. And so that is the message that I'm trying to reach with this production, and how she is allowed to evolve and become something new by the end of the play.
Abigail Aldridge plays Grisabella. She brings a depth of vulnerability, grace, and quiet resignation to the role.
Kind of the essence of the show is about acceptance, and as the show kind of goes along, we see Grisabella come back to the group and continue to be rejected until the end when she sings Memory.
Cats plays on the Broadway Palm main stage through April 4th.
Arts reporter Tom Hall joins us now with really astounding numbers. You said 250,000 cats are stray cats in Lee County. That is mind-boggling. What can we do to help reduce those numbers?
Well, Liz McCauley at the Cape Coral Animal Shelter says there's really two things that people can do to help reduce the size of the feral and community cat population. The first, adopt more cats. There's always a need for cats and kittens to be adopted, and then that creates more space. And then secondarily, all of the shelters need volunteers to help trap feral cats so that they can be brought in, spayed, neutered, and vaccinated, and then returned to their communities. So those are the two things that really would help put a dent in that 250,000 number.
Now, you got to see cats. It is a spectacular show. What was your favorite part?
Well, the choreography is absolutely amazing. The director, who's also the choreographer, Amy Marie McCleary, has found a way to incorporate the movements of cats into the choreography and the movement of her actors. So they have the same grace as a cat, but also those sudden darting movements that the cats are known for. And that's all incorporated into the choreography.
That sounds fascinating. And it runs through April?
It runs through April 4th.
April 4th, and this is at Broadway Palm.
It is. But I think the thing that was the most surprising to me out of that show is the fact that it actually places an emphasis on older populations. So in the show, cats are revered, older cats are revered for their experience, their wisdom, and for the contributions that they can make to heritage and to culture. Andrew Lloyd Webber is the one who basically wrote Cats, and he also has a very interesting juxtaposition. Whereas the older cats in the show are revered, the older male cats, I should say, are revered in spite of their size, shape, and eccentricities. Women aren't accorded the same deference. And so there is an older cat by the name of Grisabella. She's the glamour cat, and she's ostracized because her looks have faded and she doesn't have that beauty that she once possessed. And so he actually draws kind of a stark light on the difference accorded to older males versus aging women.
That's an interesting perspective. You also mentioned in the lobby, there's the opportunity to raise money for stray cats and for helping our population that's feral. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the Broadway Palm collaboration with Cape Coral Animal Shelter is multi-tiered. They actually had cats in the lobby on opening night. They had a promotion on March 1st where a certain percentage of the ticket sales went to the Cape Coral Animal Shelter. And at every production, you can purchase for $5 a paper paw. You can write anything you want on the paw, the name of your own cat, or previous cats that you may have been a caretaker for, or just any kind of message that you like. And all of those paper paws are on display in the lobby at Broadway Palm.
I'm always amazed at how many exhibitions and performances there are. I think you mentioned there's 30 art performances that we could go see as well, visual performing arts.
This week alone, there are 25 plays, musicals and plays that are on stage throughout Southwest Florida.
Any that come to mind that you think we should make a point to go see?
In addition to cats?
In addition to cats.
Well, down at Marco Island, they're doing Neil Simon's California Suite. And then there's a couple of interesting shows that are getting ready to close. For anybody who's an August Wilson fan, Two Trains Running is winding up its run at the Laboratory Theater of Florida in downtown Fort Myers.
Again, something for everybody. Thank you so much, Tom.
You're quite welcome.
Thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
For more on Tom Hall's extensive coverage on the local art scene, please head to WGCU.org. Following in the footsteps of the most powerful person in the free world, coming up, presidential descendants talk about keeping their family legacies alive. Tucked away in a corner of Key West lies the Little White House that has played host to many U.S. presidents on vacation. While the eras of Truman, Ford, and Carter might have come to an end, a new generation gathered in America's southeasternmost city to continue the legacies of former commanders-in-chiefs. As part of our coverage of Florida 250, WGCU's Pam James learned about the lasting values being carried on by these presidential descendants.
For many descendants of American presidents, the moment they realized their family was a little different came early and often unexpectedly. For Josh Carter, grandson of President Jimmy Carter, it was first grade.
I remember that everybody knew who my grandfather was, and I felt bad because I didn't know who anybody else's grandfather was and what they did and what their job was. I thought that was just something you had to know as a first grader. That's what everybody's grandpa had to do.
Grandson of President Harry Truman, Clifton Truman Daniel, also learned the truth in first grade.
And the teacher said, "Wait a minute, whoa. Wasn't your grandfather president of the United States?" To which I replied, "I don't know. That's a new one." And I marched across the living room to where my mother was sitting, and I said, "Mom, did you know that Grandpa Truman had been president?"
Susan Ford Bales is the daughter of President Gerald Ford. She discovered her family's significance during a national crisis.
When we moved in, that was not our biggest priority at the time. And you have to remember, I was 17. So it wasn't until much later in life that I really kind of figured out and began to meet some of the other descendants and the Johnsons. And of course, I had met the Nixons. And you start to commingle. And that's kind of when you realize, yeah, you live in a very small fishbowl fraternity, sorority type thing, and how lucky you are to experience it.
This informal club became official in 2021 as the Society of Presidential Descendants. Josh, Susan, and Clifton are members. They were featured at this year's Key West Harry S. Truman Foundation Annual Presidential Descendants Forum. Hosted at the Little White House, the theme for 2026 was a tribute to President Jimmy Carter. His daughter, Amy Carter, spoke of his legacy.
I don't think of the presidency as being this separate entity in his life, because he really was a man of service from basically the moment he was born. He worked on a farm. He went to the Naval Academy. He, worked on a nuclear submarine. He was the governor of Georgia. He was fighting segregation. He became president. He got out. He started the Carter Center. He just didn't stop.
Although Carter's impact was clear in some ways, Josh Carter and the other descendants shared an issue that each president faced that they believed was tinged with misunderstanding. For President Carter, it was the Iran hostage crisis.
It did take over the last 444 days of my grandfather's presidency. And it was, as he wrote many times, the hardest time of his life. But that did overshadow a lot of the good that he did.
Susan spoke about her father's decision to pardon President Nixon.
People were so angry about him doing it, and everybody was convinced that it was something he and President Nixon had worked out, which is not true. And it has taken the last 50 plus years for America to realize that it was the right decision at the right time.
And Truman's legacy? Clifton just laughs.
He was so upfront about everything he did and the reasons he did it. I don't think anybody had any way to misunderstand Harry Truman at all. He didn't like misunderstanding. He'd tell you exactly why he was doing things.
Continuing to share the human side of their presidential relatives, Clifton tells a story about a man whose car broke down outside the Truman home in Independence, Missouri.
The man walked out the front door, shook Grandpa's hand, and started down the steps, and he got halfway down and he stopped. And he looked back up and he said, "You know something? And I hope you don't take offense at this, but you look a hell of a lot like that SOB Harry Truman." And Grandpa apparently just smiled back and said, "Well, you know something? And I hope you don't take offense. I am that SOB."
Josh painted a portrait of President Carter as an outdoorsman.
He was outside nearly every chance that he would get. He was also an avid fisherman, an avid bird watcher. He would still go out during turkey season and bring his Nikon instead of his shotgun because he just loved being outside in nature.
And Susan shared a simple truth about her dad.
He was a big teddy bear. And he was one of the most incredible listeners.
A key purpose for the members of the Society of Presidential Descendants is to carry on their family history. Clifton described those duties.
There are two basic jobs. The first is to take care of your ancestors' legacy, to do what you can to keep it truthful, to keep it intact. The second thing, and probably more important, is to do something positive with it. In my case, that meant a decade or so ago visiting Hiroshima and Nagasaki and working thereafter for a few years with survivors, some of whom I call friends.
For Susan, it's a dual purpose for the Ford family.
And it's not just his legacy, but it's also my mother's legacy. I sit on the board of the Hazelton Betty Ford Foundation and will continue to do that for a long time.
And like Ford, Carter's presidency was just one term. Jimmy Carter died in late 2024 at the age of 100. James Earl Carter IV told the Forum that his grandfather actually preferred retirement.
People always say, well, he was an okay president, he was a great former president. We would say that he was great at both. But we do all agree that he was a great former president. And that was part of why he was able to use the things that gave him to get the things accomplished that he wasn't able to do as president and that he continued to work on for the rest of his life.
Steeped in their relatives' legacy, the descendants turn to the 250th anniversary and offer thoughts on the future of America.
Our history is going to continue to come and go in waves. I try and stay on an even keel because change is going to happen.
Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But take care of people, take care of each other.
We can take that mantle of human rights and respect for one another and love for one another as fellow human beings and move that forward, and we'll have a great country.
For WGCU, I'm Pam James with videographer Tom James.
Florida has a rich history with presidents, from campaign stops to the home of current President Donald Trump. But one president in particular has a strong connection with the early formation of Fort Myers. WGCU's Teddy Byrne learns how a visit from Herbert Hoover helped put the city of Palms on the map.
So for more on President Herbert Hoover's historic visit to Fort Myers, we are joined by Spencer Howard, an archivist with the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library. Mr. Howard, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So now the 31st president's visit was part of a celebration of Thomas Edison's birthday, and they had a well-known friendship between the two. But how exactly did the then president-elect end up in South Florida?
Well, Hoover had fallen in love with Florida a few years earlier. We don't know exactly why, but his first trip to Florida was in 1924. He was an avid fisherman his entire life, mostly freshwater fishing, trout and those sorts of things. But in 1924, he decided to try some saltwater fishing, and he made several visits to Florida over the next few years. His main goal was to catch a big game fish like a sailfish or a marlin, and he never caught one. And so after he was elected president in 1928, the first thing he did was he went to South America on a diplomatic visit. And then when he got back to the U.S. in early 1929, of course, in those days, the inauguration wasn't until March 4th, he spent a little bit of time putting his cabinet together, and then he wanted a vacation. So he had talked with J.C. Penney family. They offered their home in Miami as a place where he could hang out and close access to fishing. So for several weeks, he worked on his inaugural address and went fishing as often as he could, and finally caught one of those big game fish that he was looking for. So we don't know exactly how it was that he was invited to Edison's birthday, but he made a swing around the west coast of Florida on one of the yachts that he had been loaned, and stopped in at the birthday party.
So now when he came down here, obviously he met with, you mentioned Penny, Edison. There was also our other notable, residents down here with Henry Ford and Harvey Firestone. Now with Hoover serving as the former U.S. Secretary of Commerce, could this have been some sort of business gathering as he prepared himself for his incoming presidency?
Oh, I don't think that the birthday party was a working event. It was, I'm pretty sure it was just social. But yes, I mean, Hoover had been in contact, especially with Ford and Firestone. He hadn't had a whole lot of contact with Edison during his commerce years. Edison, I'm understanding is that Edison was largely retired at that point, but certainly Ford and Firestone were major industrialists at the time, and as Secretary of Commerce, Hoover had talked with them extensively. So that the common denominator here is Ford. I suspect that it's likely that Ford was the one who invited Hoover to drop in on the birthday party in February of 29. But we don't really know. That we don't have a letter or a document. It's probably a telephone call or something like that led to Hoover's appearing at the birthday party.
Well, and that is part of this too. Back in 1929, where technology is not where it used to be, I mean, this was a big deal for Fort Myers. I saw one of our local papers dubbed, when Hoover stayed actually at a guest house, they called it the official pre-inaugural White House down here. So when you have a head of state, a president who's incoming, who has all this grandeur coming into his upcoming presidency, what does this mean for small towns, especially like Fort Myers, getting put on the map just by President Hoover's visit?
Well, that's certainly true. You can find that in newspapers throughout the country, all through that era. If a president or former president stopped in, it was usually big news. But I think for the most part, the locals are just mostly starstruck by the big name that somebody that they've read about in the papers, and now they're here in person. I mean, even today, it's still a big deal, even if the person's just passing through.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mr. Howard, for your time and giving us a nice in-depth look at the impact that President Hoover had on Florida.
Well, I'm happy to chat with you anytime.
These presidential features are part of our Look at Florida 250. They are sponsored in part by the state of Florida through the Division of Arts and Culture. After the break, a jubilation of international flair and traditions, the festival that shows the joy culture can bring and its ability to unite a community in celebration. From the Far East to Western Europe, then a quick jaunt to South America, all without needing your passport. WGCU's Culture and Connections reporter Elizabeth Andarji ventured to the Mercado in Naples to learn more about the cultures and stories as part of an international festival.
Kasiyahan is the name of their group. It means happiness in Tagalog, and with more than 7,000 islands to represent, you can bet they've got plenty of reasons to dance.
Very important. That's the reason we're dancing. Yes. That way the younger people will learn our culture too.
Yes, that means kids are participating in this festival. No bench warmers allowed.
We're proud of it. Very proud.
Meet the Albanian Eagle Dance Group, made up entirely of the youngest generation.
Albanian culture is kind of an old representative to us, and it shows our dances and some of our songs.
Alyssa Tatuco says performing feels like home.
We feel amazing and we love doing it because it also shows our legacy and where we're from.
When the drums started for Rochelle Padron and the Danza Azteca Guadalupana, you could feel the history before you even saw it.
Today we're out here dancing for La Virgen de Guadalupe.
The ancient dance has been around since the Aztec Empire in Mexico.
It's nice to let people know what we do and to show the people what I love doing. Everything just gets passed down through generations.
From traditional garments to cultural dances, Naples spent the weekend proving you don't need a plane ticket to experience the world. For WGCU News, I'm Elizabeth Andarji.
On the next Southwest Florida in Focus, a massive brush fire continues to spread in Collier County, and consistent drought conditions can only create more potential hotspots. Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you head to WGCU.org, where you will find all of our stories plus the extended interviews. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you again Friday, right here on Southwest Florida in Focus.